I want to thank my patron supporters who are helping me to make more videos more often. If you'd like to become a patron supporter, please go to patreon.com/TJR, the original. Thank you for watching this video. Hey everybody, this is TJR. I want to take a little moment to talk about The Mandalorian. The season finale was this last weekend, and of course, it was huge. And the internet is abuzz with talk about it, and I definitely had some thoughts of my own about it. And my thoughts on this are deeply rooted in the differences between television when I was growing up as a kid versus television now. Back in the 60s, there was a TV show called The Fugitive. And the premise was very simple. You had a character, a Dr. Richard Kimball, who was wrongfully accused of the murder of his wife. And he manages to escape from the law. And every episode was about him on the run, looking for this elusive killer who was only referred to as the one-armed man. And from episode to episode, he would find himself maybe in a different city or a different place, and he'd encounter other people. And because he was a doctor, it made it opportune for him to be in a position where he could help other people. And he would, run into other people. He would help them. He would, of course, wouldn't tell them who he was. Sometimes people would find out, sometimes they wouldn't. But he was always trying to just be a step ahead of the law, trying to chase after him, and him trying to track down that killer. This show lasted for 4 years. It finally ended with a 2-part ending where he found the killer, and then the show was over with. One thing about television back then is that it was very reliable. Each week when you turned on a show, if you maybe missed a couple episodes like a week or so ago, it wouldn't matter because shows were self-contained. You had these self-contained episodes. There wasn't a whole lot of reliance on continuity. Maybe once in a while, 2 characters would get married or a TV couple would have a baby. And of course, if a TV show featured kids, those kids would of course get bigger from season to season. But otherwise, you could depend on Ricky to be working at the club and Lucy trying to get in the show. You could always depend that whatever scheme the castaways thought of to get off the island, it would fail, and by the next episode, they would be right back where they started. By and large, TV shows maintained a certain status quo. But things started to change in the 90s with shows like Babylon 5 and Buffy the Vampire Slayer. These types of shows relied heavily on continuity, where what happened in one episode could seriously impact later episodes, and the status quo of how a character fit into a series could irrevocably change when you least expected it. In fact, you can even go back to the Roseanne comedy show, where it was the first comedy show where there was really continuity between episodes, and what happened in one episode could impact a later episode, and plot threads didn't always get resolved at the end of each episode. Prior to that, all TV shows, dramas, comedies, everything got resolved at the end of the episode, and then it was time for another episode, with the only real exception being daytime soap operas. And what kept you coming back was the fact that there were these characters that you really liked and you cared about. And so it was just seeing what they encountered in that episode. And when The Mandalorian premiered on Disney+, I couldn't help, as I watched the first season, to think just how old school TV this was. Because just like with The Fugitive, you had kind of this basic setup. You had this character who's a bounty hunter, and he breaks his bounty hunter code and rescues this child who was his bounty. This kind of makes him an outlaw among outlaws, more or less. That may not be the best description, but I think you get what I'm going at here. And so each episode during that first season, and for part of the second season, it's just him and the baby, him and the child, and each episode has him going from place to place or planet to planet, trying to find ways to accomplish his goal, which is to find another Jedi to bring the child to. In a way, like I said, not unlike The Fugitive, where he is an outlaw and he's going from town to town trying to find the killer. The Mandalorian is going from planet to planet, trying to stay one step ahead of his pursuers, and trying to take care of this child and also trying to complete his quest. And it was very old school TV in that the episodes were fairly well self-contained. Now, granted, compared to old school TV of the 60s and 70s, this show had a lot more continuity by comparison. But by comparison to modern TV, where, a lot of these new TV shows, and especially streaming shows, they're not so much episodic TV as they are extended long movies. If a show is 6 episodes long, it's like a 6-hour movie or a 10-hour movie. It's a very different type of television. And of course, this has been going on for years, but especially with streaming TV, there's this whole idea that it is more like an extended movie. But The Mandalorian was different. It really felt like old school TV. One little comparison I like to make is that a lot of action adventure shows from the 60s especially, and the 70s, during the ending credits, you'd see little still frames of scenes from previous episodes. Star Trek, the original Star Trek series was a good example of this. And the ending credits for The Mandalorian always ended with still images of the production art. I know they add a little bit of motion, but for the most part, it's a still frame of production art from that episode, which I thought was a cool thing because it was great to see the production art. It really gave you a good reason to stay for the closing credits. But it was very reminiscent of the closing credits of shows like the original Star Trek and other action-adventure shows from days gone by, from what I call old school TV. And I remember people complaining, younger viewers, younger critics complaining that, he just goes he goes to a planet, he does something, maybe he helps some people, and then he moves on. And they're saying, come on, let's move on with the plot. Let's get to the whole idea of him finding the Jedi that he needs to take this baby to. And as I read these comments, these criticisms, I thought, they don't get it. They're too young to understand. This is a throwback to old school TV. When I watched The Mandalorian, the first season, I was very much pleased. The kind of the feeling that this show brought back of what it was like growing up with the kind of TV that existed back then, where the episodes were mostly self-contained. That was, I shall say, I found it very comforting, the reliability of that, which you got with old school TV. At the opening of the second season, I remember there were still complaints about this, saying, well, the show's good, but come on, it needs to get on with the story and everything. And I thought they still don't get it. And I almost thought of making a video talking about that. But then a couple episodes in, things started to happen. And with each episode, things started happening quicker and quicker and quicker. And I thought, oh my gosh. As we got very close to the last couple episodes, I thought, they could very well have Mando get to where he finds that Jedi that he needs to take the child to, that could happen. I almost thought it was going to happen when Ahsoka appeared. I thought it was going to happen then, but it didn't. I thought, no, they've got to at least stretch it out for another season. I'm sure they're going to at least do that. But as it turns out, they did what I didn't think they were going to do. They brought Mando to the end of his quest. And of course, there's the big spoiler reveal. By the way, at this point, if you don't want spoilers, if you haven't seen The Mandalorian season finale of season 2, please leave right now. Go, because I'm going to talk about that. Of course, we have Luke Skywalker show up. And yeah, okay, I get it. Yeah, bad CGI. Hey, doesn't matter. It was a great episode. It was a thrilling episode, that season finale. But at the same time, it kind of made me a little sad. And not for the reasons you might think. Yes, it was very sad and touching to see Mando say goodbye to Grogu. But I also felt sad because it felt like the show was over now. The moment the fugitive finds his killer, the show is over with. And I kept thinking to myself, the moment he finishes his quest, it's over with. Now, of course, that would be old school TV. In new school TV, no, that's not going to happen. We're just going to completely change direction now. And I know there's going to be a third season of The Mandalorian, but it's going to be a completely different show. Unless they find a way to bring the child back, which I hope doesn't happen, Because once you change the status quo, I feel you need to commit to it. The worst thing you could do is that one episode into season 3, Luke Skywalker comes back and says, I can't do this after all. Here, take the kid back. And we're back to the status quo. Worst thing you can do once you've changed it. You change the status quo, you commit to it. So I feel pretty firmly that the creators of this show are not going to do that, that they are going to take this into a completely different direction. At this point now, we've got all this attention here on the fact that he has the dark saber, and that he is basically, this makes him, the ruler of the Grand Poobah, of the Mandalorian world, so to speak. And it's also a position that he doesn't really want, at least as far as I can tell. It doesn't look like he really wants this position. And the person who did want the position, Bo-Katan, is really upset about this. So we've got a whole new series here. And you could even change the title of it, I think, because it could feature these characters, but you change the title. In fact, I don't think they're going to, but I would kind of recommend maybe they do, or at least give it a subtitle. Mandalorian, the, in parentheses, whatever the title is, with the great something or other, whatever you're going to call it. But it's no longer the Mandalorian anymore. And I'm sad because every week I was enjoying the interplay between these two characters that I cared about, the Mandalorian and Grogu. But I would have been happy if Luke Skywalker hadn't shown up. I mean, as awesome as an episode as it was, I would have been happy if he hadn't shown up, if Mando had not reached the end of his quest, and the third season was going to be more of Mando and Grogu on their journey together, having these adventures together, and getting to see more of that relationship. I would have been happy with that. And that's what we loved about old school TV. And I have a pretty good feeling that Jon Favreau, that during that first season, that's what he was going for. He was going for that old school TV feel. And a little bit of that carried into season 2, but then it just shifted into warp speed, and it just started to have the plot that everybody was saying, please give us this. It started happening at light speed, in my opinion. And those were thrilling episodes. I can't knock them. But I am sad that the series that I was into has ended now. Now, of course, the good news is that when they pick up with season 3, it's going to be a completely different series, but I'm confident that everybody involved creatively is going to make a new, intriguing, and very interesting series. So, first of all, I just want to thank Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni and everybody involved with the Mandalorian series for not only giving us a great series, but also for giving people like me within my generation a return to that feeling of old school TV. There was a real comfort to the fact that TV shows back then didn't change very much. Sometimes the real world can be so chaotic and unstable that having that stability of a TV show where very little change and you could just rely on the same cast of characters week after week, there was something terribly comforting about that. But at the end of the day, new school TV is much more exciting, much more fascinating, and much more compelling. But I'd like to think that in the world of today's television, there's room for both. There's room for old school TV and new school TV. So I also have to compliment the creators of The Mandalorian for balancing both of those within those first 2 seasons. And I'm looking forward to season 3. I'm not sure how far away that's going to be. And I'm looking forward to a lot of these new Star Wars TV shows that'll be coming to Disney+. They've got quite a bit planned. So it should be very fun and very interesting. And anyways, those are my thoughts. Let me know what you think. And what did you think of the season finale of season 2? I have some other thoughts on this series and on that season finale that I may or may not get into in other videos. Just other things that I'm not going to include here because they're going off on a totally different tangent. Anyways, everybody, thank you so much for watching. If you like what I'm doing, be sure to click like, click subscribe, and smash that bell notification icon so you can know when I release new videos. And I hope you all stay safe and healthy. Bye-bye.